The first thing I want to note here is what I often hear when we compare countries like Finland and the United States and Canada, that Finland is too different for many reasons to be compared or taken seriously. And my response always is that yes, Finland, we are different, but we are all different nations if we start to see how we are actually dealing with the things. I'm not so much concerned about the ethnic diversity or number of immigrants or the size of the country or the population or these things where we are located. But Finland is a very different country, and particularly now in terms of the equity issue that we have been talking about here, compared to many others. Not so much probably with Canada, because if you look at some of these features that I picked for you that are very deep in the culture and minds of Finnish people, I find Canadian society and your social values pretty much close to what we are seeing as important things. But this is a very different kind of a set of values and issues compared to the American things. I lived 5 years in Washington, D.C., worked there, and I learned to understand how different our countries are actually. The size is not different, but these things that go to how people live and what they think is important they make us a very different countries. I would like to emphasize the last one. If you look at the seventh feature there, this is a very, very typical way of how Finns think about things. We like small things. You know, our hamburgers have to be very small, and cars are very tiny. Yeah, houses are small. Everything is small. This is how we think we should be living here. We also are very quiet. You know, we don't talk much. They're silent people. We communicate through silence, as many people say. And we have this principle also in education that less is more. So we are very different, but the size of the country or population, these are not so important things, but how the culture is organized. The next thing, this is a response to the question that why should we listen to Finland? And why Finland is an interesting case. And don't think that I'm here to tell you what you should do or that you should do the things like we have been doing. I only try to convince that Finland is an interesting example, that we have been able to do something that is worth studying and looking at what has been going on there. And if we compare the overall progress of education that has taken place during the last few decades in Finland to the kind of a global thing. This is my kind of a rough estimate. So if this is the kind of a global development in rich countries, what Finland has been able to do is that we have been running behind. Actually, we have been running a lot behind in terms of quality, efficiency, also equity and participation in education, the level of attainments. But at some point of time, we have been able to pass almost all the other countries in all these areas. I'm not only talking about the PISA score, but I'm talking about all these things, also equity. And this makes Finland an interesting case, that what was done there, what type of policies and reforms and structures we put in place to be able to outperform almost everybody else in all these 4 important areas of educational performance. So I'm one of those who is always questioning the use of the PISA test results only as a proxy for educational quality. That's why Finnish teachers don't like PISA, because they think that education is much more than just your test score in maths and science or literacy. Okay, so this is one reason why we are kind of an interesting case. Just very quickly, this is how our education system looked like 30 years ago. And you don't need to go into the details, but you will see that we had a kind of a parallel system that had a structural inequality built into this system. This system that we had divided people at the age of 10, like when I went to school, to those who went all the way to university, and then those who didn't. Okay, and this created a huge inequity within the education system. And we replaced this system in early 1970s with this one that is also the current way how education is organized. And again, I'm not going to go into the details with all these things, but you will see that there's a much more structure already there that is preventing failure and preventing the inequality and inequity within the education system. Finnish children go to school when they are 7, and they have to study in the school until they're 16 or when they have completed the basic education. And there are many pathways, there are no dead ends that are very important for this equity issue in education. So this is how we have changed the system to make sure that everybody has a pathway to go all the way to the PhD if they want to. So you can choose any route, any school type, and you can always go all the way to the top. Next one. Okay, here you see the transition numbers. We have about 60% of our high school leavers will go to tertiary education, which is one of the highest in the world. Okay, so these are some of the characteristics that are relevant to this equity discussion that we have had here. Okay, this is one of the figures that you may remember from the 2006 OECD PISA. The next results will come out in about a month's time. And this is about the performance variation. This is a science, I think it's a science data from 2006 PISA. And now if we break this down, this is a kind of a classical picture when we talk about equity here. So you will see how different countries are in terms of between school variation in student performance. And Finland and the other Nordic countries are there in the side where the between school variation is very small. And then we have Germany and Austria and others where this structure that you saw before that Finland had is creating actually this type of equity, inequality within the system. And this also invites a question that, so what has Finland been doing to be able to do this, or Sweden or other Nordic countries? And one of the reasons is certainly that our society is built like this, that it values taking care of others, but also the school structure is built in a way, and schools are equipped with the tools so that they can deal with these inequalities, social inequalities that children bring when they come to the school. I'll talk about this in a little while. A couple of pictures that will show you how the picture looks like when we combine the equity and quality issue, and this is where everybody wants to be. All the education systems would like to have a good quality of learning and be equity-wise, have a high equity and low inequity in the system. And there are not many countries who are able to do those. Canada and Finland are some of those where we have fairly high student performance and also high equity. So this is where we are. And this is a particular reason also to ask that what are these countries doing so that they can have both quality and equity at the same time. Another interesting thing, if we look at the income inequalities and how they correlate on the student performance, this is something I constructed using the OECD PISA data again, where you see Finland, Canada, and United States, and you see how the income inequalities increase between these three countries, and also the performance, the learning performance of students seem to be correlating. It doesn't really matter if I use science, mathematics, or literacy; it's all the same trend. When the income inequalities increase, then also the student performance seem to likely to go down. So let's move to look at some of the things that Finland is that we are doing. I'm separating two types of things that we have within our education system that are particularly related to equity. So I'm not talking about so much how we get the high quality, high score in PISA, but what do we do to get the very high equity within the system? And this is, by the way, this is something that not many visitors who come to Finland ask. They want to know, how do you get there in a student performance? And we would like to talk more about how do we get there in a high equity. And these are some of these things that we have. Well-prepared teachers who are able to work with the pupils before they are actually able to work with the pupils before the problems get too serious. And this is a kind of a Finnish way of dealing with these things. And all the primary school teachers in Finland have been prepared to do this. They have a certain amount of studies in special education, and everybody has to understand what is happening in the classroom. So they are not dependent on an external special education teacher or somebody, an expert, before they can act. So every teacher will be equipped with this type of knowledge and skills that they can deal with these. They can understand when something is going wrong or going to go wrong with any individual there, and they can deal with these issues. So this is a kind of an early intervention and care type of policy or principle that we have very deeply rooted in our primary school system. And then we have the flexible arrangements. And if you look at those things, I think one thing that is very different to the policies and practices between Finland and North America is that if the school has to make the decision to move a pupil into some type of special education, we have different categories. We have a part-time and full-time special education and something like this. These decisions can be made very, very quickly. So we don't need to wait 6 months or 1 year like somebody here told me that it takes about 1 year to move a student from the normal class to special education class if there's a need to do that. We can do this very, very quickly, and we can also return these students back, include them back to the normal classes. And I think this flexibility is a kind of a typical way of dealing with these difficulties in Finland. So we have adopted the different policy, a strategy actually, how to deal with these students with the special needs. I think the common way of dealing with this is a kind of a principle of repairing things. Yeah, so we repair the thing when there is already damage or problem, and try to help these things. In Finland, we have this idea of prevention. So we intervene early and try to identify those individuals who need help, and that's why we have much more students with the special needs. In the special needs services in the early years of primary school compared to United States or Canada or almost any other country. But this number decreases as the students progress during the course of the education. In the United States, this is totally opposite, the other way around, that the number of those who are in trouble increases as the students progress. So we believe in this type of idea of quality, maximizing the quality at entry. And one of those important things is how do we deal with the teachers in primary education? And this is, again, I call this sometimes a Finnish privilege, because we are the only country on this planet where we can cherry-pick the students, high school leavers, who will be studying to become primary school teachers in our universities. It's a very competitive, very careful selection, and as you see in this picture, there are 10 candidates for each study place in our universities in primary school teacher master's programs. And they are very, very carefully screened and selected, and we can easily say that those students are recruited from the top 20% of our high school graduates, and not only that the student has to be academically very, very solid and strong, including mathematics and science, but they also have to show the strong moral commitment to teaching. You have to be able to explain why do you want to become a teacher. It's not enough that you have straight A's from high school. You have to show that you understand the profession where you're going. And that's why we have, as soon as these individuals graduate, they go to school and they never leave until they die or retire. Mostly they retire before they die. Yeah? But we have very few teachers who are leaving teaching profession because this is really what they want to do. And one thing Ben was saying, asking about these secrets, one thing in Finland that nobody really knows is that we have teaching is among the high school graduates every year the #1 profession they want to do. More than 20% every spring report that my ideal favorite profession in life is to be a teacher. And only then comes the lawyer and doctors and all the others. But everybody wants to become teacher, and that's why this game is even more competitive. So if you see these primary school teacher students in our universities, they are very, very smart and good people there. They know what they are doing, they know why they are there, and they will become great teachers. So that's the strength of Finland. And when our children will be working with these great teachers for the first 6 years, you can do almost anything with them in the middle school and high school. They already are good learners and very strong personalities, and it's a good basis to continue. So why teaching is so attractive? And I have some important points to make. I have grouped these in 3 different categories. One is a kind of a social cultural thing, that teaching is really a kind of a respected and valued profession still in our society, as I said. The teachers have autonomy, and they have very good working conditions in the school. And these good working conditions are not only small classes or small schools like we have, but we have a kind of a respectful, professionally respectful environment for teachers to work. We don't have this blaming and shaming thing because we don't have any standardized external testing for all the schools that would be high stake like in many other countries. We have a lot of evaluation and a lot of assessment. Some people say that too much in Finland, but we don't do it in a way of a kind of a census-based high stake testing like in some other countries do. We rely on teachers' professional knowledge and skills, just like Ben was talking about this airplane landing, that we don't need to ask the boss why we are doing this or how things are going. Teachers know exactly how this will be done. And then the third one, Finnish teachers, they teach also in primary school much less than your teachers here or anywhere else. I think Korea is the only country where teachers have so low teaching load. So it means that our teachers have time to collaborate and cooperate with other teachers in the staff rooms. And our staff room, somebody from the United States who was visiting us a few months ago wrote a story in the newspaper about the staff rooms in our schools. And I went to see a high school in New York a month ago, and I wanted to see the teachers' staff room, 75 teachers, 1,200 students in a Manhattan high school, and there was none. There was not a staff room where all the teachers can sit like this. How can you collaborate and talk about teaching and learning and things if you don't have a proper place where you meet? And this is a kind of a basic condition in any Finnish school, that you see a beautiful room for teachers where they have everything they need, including space to work and spend time with other teachers and talk about important things. So that's why, teaching profession is really seen as a high profession, exactly like medicine or law or anything else where you can practice your trade in a respectful environment. Very, very important part. So let me close by saying a few things about what next, because this is actually the title of the... so if I move to the third half of my presentation now, this is about what's next for Finland, okay? Now,
how good is your math?
I used to be a math teacher for many years, but I forgot these things. Okay, the situation now seems almost too good. You remember this Newsweek story a couple of months ago where the cover said that the best country in the world is, and when you open the Newsweek it says Finland. And education is one of those indexes there, and they used a kind of a rating from 0 to 100 to all these health and education and others. And guess how much Finland got from education? No, 102. I don't know how is it possible, but read the story and you see that they gave 102 points out of 100 to Finnish education. I'm not sure that this is absolutely correct thing, but anyway. And yesterday there's a Toronto-based organization. Have you heard about this? The Higher Education Strategy Association. They published this report yesterday here in this city. Yeah. So this is about the equity in higher education. This ranks or compares 17 countries, among them Canada and the United States and Finland and many others. And guess what? If we look at the affordability and accessibility to higher education, again, Finland was number one in both of these areas. Yeah? So this is a very fresh news that you hear now. So also, we keep on having these rankings almost every day that's saying that Finland is performing, if not in the top, but in a very, very high position. So the future looks very good in this way. So let's look at some of these strategic principles that we have. First of all, that we are now in a situation where we have to seriously focus on making sure that we have high-quality, publicly financed public services available, including education in the future. We have a special education that is a very, very important strategic principle. We have to do more with this thing and clarify more what do we mean by special education, because that's not a clear thing. And we have to further advance inclusion, because we are becoming very, very quickly a multicultural, diverse society like all the others in Europe. So our goal still is, and this will be our goal in education for the future, is a kind of a socially fair or socially just and equal educational opportunities for everybody. So the challenges that we have, you can see there, is increasing inequity. including the income inequality that is increasing in Finland, like in many rich countries. We have a very rapidly growing immigration in our country. During the next in the next 10-15 years, our country will look very different. And the funding and resources thing is what we have to think. And this goes back to the question that whether we should be putting so much money in higher education that you saw in this global ranking in the previous picture, and shift this money to basic and preschool education and make sure that these services are there. My guess is that this will eventually happen at some point. But our constitution now stipulates that education is a human right for everybody in Finland. So nobody can charge any fees for education that is leading to the degree or qualification in Finland by the constitution. So we have to change the constitution if we want to do this for some reason. It's, by the way, it's free for Canadians and Americans as well. So if you want to study in our great universities, it's all free still for a while. Yeah? So we have two scenarios to finish with that I see. I call these two scenarios that we have for the what next for Finland as a third way, so that we will continue in this third way of change that include ideas like that we will increase this, we will build this data-driven education system, and we start to do things like many other countries have been doing. There's nothing wrong with data, but there's a lot of questions that I have to the systems that are driven by data. And we, for sure, we have to improve in Finland this thing. But the risk here is that we start to follow this movement that many other countries are doing and having too much data that is then driving the whole thing. The other element here is that we will increase competition between schools and individuals and teachers and students, and then provide support on the other side, which is again something that is a very typical thing in many countries. Or that we will push even further the idea of productivity and find alternative ways of funding education, including the private money from private pockets. So this is a kind of a scenario that is probably equally likely to be somehow visible in Finland during the next 10-15 years than this second one that I call the fourth way model. That is, this is borrowed from my colleague Andy Hargreaves, what he's talking about. So this model says that we will move on with the data-informed system development, where the data will be used to inform the change and renewal of education system in a kind of a modest and reasonable way. This will also include the idea of enhancing the networking and collaboration between schools and why not school systems. What we would like to do in Finland is to have more global networking with your countries, with Canada and the United States as well. And I'm here also to learn, and this is exactly what the networking is, that I want to learn from you, and I'm happy if you can learn something from me. And this is what we should be doing with this networking thing. And thirdly, this scenario also includes the idea of focusing more and more on learning and creativity in a real sense of the word.